Hello, my name is Karina Rodriguez. I'm from the University of Brighton, and I'm going to present this project, which is about gathering requirements within specific user communities, which are the arts and humanities communities. And by these communities, we mean researchers, but also practitioners that work, for instance, in the GLAM sector, which is the galleries, libraries, archives, and museum sectors, as well as the research technical professionals that support the research. Just quickly, a summary of our aim is to engage with these communities, the arts and humanities, to collectively elicit requirements around federation and to support the roadmap development. Very quickly, the team is Kings and Brighton, and Matt is here, and Virginia there at the back from the team, and they are supporting the project. And I'll very quickly give you our interpretation. Now, I like this photo from the previous presentation, our connecting parts. I think for us was very important to try to map what we see as the elements of the infrastructure that researchers in these communities have access to. So what we decided to do is to map them in the different components. And at the center here, we have the researchers, as I mentioned, practitioners and the RTPs. And on the one hand, we have the skills, right? So that goes to the training frameworks and different ways that they will enhance their skills, but also the communities that support this ecosystem. Now, these are more soft elements of the infrastructure, because at the bottom here, we now have what potentially the funder or the HRC will be looking at the data services. And I must say that this is a very big asset for these communities. These communities sit on a lot of data, which they generate, but also that the organizations that they work with generate. So the archives, the museum will have a lot of this information. And lastly, we have now the systems and the tools and the software and the workflow that get developed. Now, I will agree with the speaker before that what is missing here is the connections. The ability to connect compute to data, or compute to tools, or workflows to tools, or training to tools in easy way that can go from those and guide the users to these journeys. And this is very much what we have found in our work we have done so far, right? Trying to understand where researchers might benefit from these interlinkages. So what we are doing here is, as we mentioned before, trying to understand what are these user journeys, right? What is the good way to start and how to guide researchers, but also improving that connectivity between those components that I mentioned before. And of course, we would like to test approaches to guide the users to these paths and collect the feedback, of course, for the roadmap. Okay, how we have done it? I must completely, be honest to you. At the beginning, we were going to do survey. But when we came to Edinburgh, we realized that everybody was doing a survey, and we sort of said, we really want, or we need to do a survey. So what we did is we thought, okay, let's look what has been published about the requirements of the community. So we sort of changed from the survey to a desk-based research. Now we look at a lot of surveys that have been done with this community, and we spend, just going through the literature to come with what I will present today, which are the requirements that we gather. And then we focused on that particular component we didn't know much about, which was this component, right? Because right now the HRC is going through the federation of these data services, so we wanted to understand their perspectives and their needs when it comes to users accessing those data services. So we are going down. We'll finish, I think, in a couple of weeks. And then we'll be looking at testing some approaches for these user journeys and trainings, and we'll be collating the feedback. We have already published so far. There's a report with initial findings of what we have collected of the literature, and you can have access to that. But what I would like to present today, apart from some slides that I have with some of the summaries, is this kind of idea of the user journey. And again, we think about a user that is going to want to access the infrastructure, and at that stage, they might just kind of have a question that they believe they might need some infrastructure for. And at this stage, they kind of have an idea for the research. They might have been, already given the funding for the project, and they might be looking for it. But what we typically find in our community is that we have these three steps that people will go along, right? They start to think, okay, I need to collect the data that is going to help me to prove or disprove or find a pattern in the data, because I want to tell a story with that data. And maybe the story is already in the mind of the researcher, and they just want to find the adequate data to say it. So they are building this corpus of data, and for that they will need to be looking at the different data services, data sources, or it can be that the data is not yet in a digital format, and they need to take a digitization process, and that happens a lot, right? It can be that they need to 3D scan, or just scan a lot of documents, OCR. So they will go a lot into the data shaper. Afterwards, a lot of people are interested in the AI. So it will be, okay, we have now a bunch of data, can we do some kind of magic with the AI? And we talk about these steps of being the AI compute developers. Many times these researchers get support in that process. They might not have the skills. And many times they would just come and use a model that is already available, an inference model, to look at the data and connect it. Finally, we want these researchers to be able to publish their papers, right? And this thing is never linear, because a researcher might work out, they don't have enough data here, and they need to go back to generate more data, and they get into a sort of workflow, right, in which they can now grow because they have an established workflow what they want to do. Okay, so from my experience, what I have put in here is that a lot of our researchers say, we need HPC, right? We want to do this stuff here. But what we realized actually is they lack the infrastructure to get to this. And this is, in a way, when we oversee what are the needs of these communities, because in my opinion, a lot of our researchers live in this area. And what are the tools and what are the user journeys that we provide for them to develop the research in that area is something we are trying to understand. So these researchers might need things like not necessarily the HPC, but the workflow systems, how to deploy a workflow in which they can clean their data easily, or be able to support better OCR or better image recognition. So I'll come now with some quick summaries of what we have seen. And again, as I said, you can look at the report and look at it in more detail, but what we have seen is that users will really benefit from clear user journeys. And by that, I don't mean the HPC system, I don't mean to the shell command. I just simply mean what are the elements of this infrastructure that I would need to do to tell that story I want to do at the very beginning of my research, and how can I access it? And it might be that they do not need HPC. Actually, it might be that there are many other elements like training or platforms to develop workflows or on the cloud services. But they would like some kind of support or proper service to understand where they have to go and when. There is a lot of discussion in our community. I don't know if the communities, but there is a lot of discussion about the role that AI and LLMs have to play for support these researchers to code, right? So we see a lot of the community simply just kind of using Claude or ChatGPT and say, give me a system or give me a script that will do this, and then I can use it for that. So there is a kind of natural curiosity about how far can this support the exploration they want to do for those tools and that infrastructure, as well as supporting different levels of expertise and access. Okay, so as I said, this is not only about HPC. We see a lot of the demands for users that are data-oriented to find workflows which are more linked to data-heavy use. So workflow platforms or cloud-based services as well as not having to rely on that command line. So visual and intuitive interfaces. And something we have worked out from the interviews that we have had is that many times the data that they sit on or they are looking at is quite sensitive, but not sensitive because it belongs to people, but sensitive because of the issues of copyright. Yeah, so anybody that is exploring the material of this century or 50 years ago will have sensitive data because of this reason. Some of the things we have already said: inclusivity, disciplinarity, community buildings, and the shared authentication, right? So this idea of being able to work with things that go outside universities, and a lot of concerns about sustainability, not only of the platform, but also the careers of the people involved in using it. Okay, and again, being able to support post-project maintenance. Okay, so you can spend much more time with the report. I would have gone through all of this and just put it to sleep. So what I would say is our next step is very much take this requirement that we have gathered. We are finishing now the interviews with the data service, and we'll try to collect our information. But what we want to develop is some examples of what a user journey might look like. So we'll have a workshop probably in June. What we will do is we will design different ways that the researcher might be able to access some data set through a VM or through trusted research environment, so we can test and get feedback both for training and for that user journey of the infrastructure. And we will collect the feedback and put into the roadmap. And I think that's all. Thank you very much.